Thank you, Councillor Lynch. I again acknowledge that we're on Wonnarua Country and in the boundaries of the Minderibba Local Aboriginal Land Council. In my job supporting the Council to implement their strategic agenda, it's a great honour for me to be here to provide you with this NSWALC update. Just over 40 years ago, at a meeting of over 200 of our leaders, held at the Black Theatre in Redfern, the New South Wales Aboriginal Land Council was formed. This was arguably our first NSWALC statewide conference. And at this conference, like all other statewide conferences since 1977, we honour the legacy and continue the work of this earlier generation of land rights warriors. It has been a long road to get here, from 1977 and the first meeting of NSWALC, and from long before then too. Through the Keane Report in 1978 that recommended land rights to Parliament, to the passing of ALRA in 1983, the same year that saw the start of the blockade to fight for Mutawinji. We then had to establish our Land Council's boundaries and build our Land Council membership. We have survived the attack on land rights in 1990, but we lost regional land councils in that fight. And we survived the sunset on the land tax input into the statutory fund in 1998. We have survived other knocks and other changes too. And some of these were self-inflicted, like when NSWALC went into administration in 2003. Others were ambushes by powerful people with a hostile intent towards us, like the attempt to retrospectively extinguish land claims with the Crown Land Beaches Bill in 2014. At all of these times, we've come together, a bit like we do today, and we have shouldered the struggle collectively. This proud history was one of the things that made me want to leave the comfort of the public service and come and work at NSWALC. But I was reminded of it once again not long after I'd been appointed to this role, when we held our 40th anniversary celebrations. As many of us will remember, the dinner was a joyous occasion and a good time held by all. But I was struck on that night by the enormous burden and responsibility to the land rights legends we honoured that night. To not let them down, to carry on their work, to build on their legacy. All of us have leadership positions in the land rights movement, and those of us that are here at this conference share that responsibility. On that night, I thought about how we as a land council and as a land rights movement have endured, have survived, and we have grown. One of the best examples of how we've grown is our statutory fund. Since the sunset on the land tax inputs into the statutory account, we've carefully managed and grown the fund from 485 million to over 670 million today. This is Aboriginal money in Aboriginal hands, but it alone isn't adequate compensation or recompense or even equal to our original demands in setting up the land rights system in New South Wales. What we do have is the inheritance of our future generations, and our councillors regard its careful management of our inheritance as a cultural and legal duty, and it upholds it very seriously. It's a duty that the council cannot legally delegate to anyone else, the management of the statutory fund. Council takes on the best advice they can to ensure that we are in a position to pass on at least the same financial independence and opportunities to future generations of Aboriginal people in this state. Of course, it's not all been up and up, and we, during the global financial crisis, or GFC, took a hit like everyone else. Now actually, we didn't take as bad a hit as others. Even during the GFC impact, we have met our long-term targets of 7.5% return on investments on a rolling 5-year basis. What this chart up here shows you is if you had $1 in 2003 and you put that same dollar into the NSWALC account, you would have $3.29 today. If you had that same dollar and you put it into another equivalent fund, you'd have between $2.47 and $2.69. That's pretty impressive, but again, it's not the end. We're not done. We have outperformed the comparable funds that we benchmark ourselves in investments against. And most notably, we've outperformed the New South Wales Government's Treasury's own T Corp fund. No one on the council would claim to be a financial guru, apart from perhaps Councillor Lynch. But this performance has been achieved by listening to and acting on the best financial advice that we can get. As many of you would be aware, this financial advice has told us that now is the right time to sell our office at 33 Argyle Street, Parramatta. And this is not a decision that Council took lightly. 33 Argyle Street has an important place in the history of our movement. When it was purchased in 1992, it was one of the first significant property acquisitions Council made out of the investment fund. Having a flagship asset owned by Aboriginal people was a huge achievement. But 33 Argyle Street was purchased as part of the investment fund, and it was not purchased for its cultural or heritage value. As with all investments, at some point, you need to make a return on that investment and reinvest the profits for the benefits of our people. That's what we're doing here with the sale of 33 Argyle Street, Parramatta. The proceeds from the sale of 33 Argyle Street will be reinvested into the statutory account, and it will contribute to our ongoing business and investment operations, not just for today, but for the future. It's only with that continuing success and strong growth of the statutory account that we can make sustained investments for the benefits of the land rights network. Let me share you an example here. So if we kept that building, which is valued at $28.5 million, with a compounded return of 5.2%, in 10 years' time, we'll have $48 million equivalent. Selling and reinvesting the sale proceeds into our diversified portfolio, which is how we get this sort of outcome, will mean in 10 years at a rate of 8.2%, which is what we're performing at, that will be $92.3 million. That's $55 million difference. In addition to that expert advice that we receive, Council is guided by the drawdown rule. In managing expenditure, we've got to manage both sides, income and expenditure. And the drawdown rule is a self-imposed rule for Council that's been in place now for several years, about 7 years from memory. But it is about the long-term sustainability and management of the fund. And I'm very pleased to report that we met that drawdown rule last financial year for the first time. Most importantly, though, we've continued to fund our network. Over 60% of the annual budget of NSWALC is going directly back into LALCs and to membership benefits. But as impressive as these figures are, they are not enough to fund the aspirations of our land councils and our communities. To really secure our financial independence, our self-agency and our future, we need to both diversify our areas of economic activity and grow the value of our collective asset base. And you've heard those regional presentations touch on that, and you'll hear more regional presentations, which is the same story. As important as the health of our statutory account is, it's a means to an end, but we're far from being done. The statutory fund is not our only core business, land is. Securing the return of as much land that was taken from us as possible. That's our goal. And using that land to make us once again economically prosperous and keep us culturally strong. We have also gone a long way to reacquiring our land since 1983. And Minister Scullion stole some of my lines here earlier, but we have lodged since 83 over 46,000 land claims. And 11,700 of these have been determined, the majority of which have been rejected. 8,641 have been refused. But when we determine that we will appeal those, we win 90% of cases. Our legal team wins in 90% of appeals. Now that's a very strong legal precedent in our favour. Importantly, we've had 3,060 claims successfully granted. The result of all of this is that we collectively have reacquired in land rights in New South Wales under this land rights system that we've proudly made our own. We have reacquired over 350,000 hectares of land. Those of you that like football fields, that's over 700,000 football fields. This is part of our cultural inheritance, but it's also an economic asset. And despite some great successes in LALCs, this is an asset that up to now we've not been strategic enough in both claiming but using and managing. Being a large landowner is not without its challenges. Approximately half of the state is currently under native title claims, including large tracts of Aboriginal-owned land. But where there are issues, there are also opportunities. Improving relations where we can, engagement, negotiations with native title groups. They are a mob in many cases, they're our members. And Aboriginal land councils is a good first step in improving the dividends that we can collectively deliver back to our people. But it's not the only opportunity for us to improve our business, to improve our returns. And it's not just native title groups who we should be taking into our confidences. As land councils, we really need to work more closely in a more unified way with each other. Today, our reacquired lands are estimated to be worth around, conservatively, estimated to be worth around $2 billion. This is, and mind you, we conservatively put this figure because we don't have a lot of knowledge about the asset base that we own. And our knowledge about that land needs to improve markedly. We can continue along as business as usual with this large asset, all working independently and sometimes even worse, against each other. Or we can recognise that to increase the outcomes from the land that we've recovered, we need to work together. We need to work together. To improve on the return of our strategic lands, collectively, we need to work smarter. When we look at the other significant landholders in this country, to benchmark our land portfolio management, frankly, we don't look great. But again, this presents us with a great opportunity. We have a choice before us. We could continue down the road of business as usual, and in 10 years' time, the portfolio will have increased a little bit, but in line with market capitalisation appreciation. Or we can actively and collectively begin to manage the hard-won lands to get the greatest economic return. It's an asset. And if we can do this properly, there is a real opportunity to significantly grow our portfolio while increasing the retention of lands, keeping our lands. This is vital if we're to avoid being slowly redispossessed, and which is what we're experiencing at our own hands at the moment, as we chase a quick fix or respond to the crisis by selling land with sometimes little uplift. But this approach is totally at odds with the in perpetuity property owner that we need to be. We've shown we can manage the statutory accounts skillfully, strategically and responsibly. We now need to adopt the same approach with our land holdings. This is just some of the immediate thinking behind Council's new strategic plan that our Chairman talked about briefly earlier this morning. And as you heard, I think we need to shift from surviving to thriving. We want to be able to move from the old deficit model that we are all too familiar with to one that stresses excellence and achievement. To do this, the Council is also looking at afresh two other significant assets. So in addition to the land that we've reacquired, the other two assets are our people and our culture and heritage. And it is this thinking that has informed the development of Council's strategic plan that will guide us over the next 5 years. As you may be aware, Council has set an ambitious strategic plan mapping out 5 goals. In terms of land and water, Council have directed that we develop a new land and water portfolio plan. This will be a significant step in shifting our business up a gear. It will be the basis of working smarter and more collaboratively around our most significant economic asset. We think this can be a game changer, but it will take all of us to rethink our approach to business as usual. We need to find a more effective and efficient delivery approach to unlocking our potential, and that is going to take collaboration. That has always been one of our strengths, collaboration, working together. The planning process for this is still in a design, but we will be talking at regional forums and to LALCs directly as this plan starts to take shape. We're also putting in place the GIS for all LALCs to support strategic decision making about claiming, managing and using lands. And it's frankly overdue. It's an overdue foundation piece for improving our business. We have some demonstrations of the GIS, and I know many of you have already started to use the new GIS system for LALCs. As far as culture and heritage is concerned, we're continuing to support the good work done by our LALCs, by you, and we will keep advocating for legislation that meets the principles for reforms that we discuss further at a breakout session on culture and heritage. It's extremely frustrating, and even more so heartbreaking, that legislative reform that we have been fighting for well over a decade has been once again delayed. This happened just as we thought we were getting close to a legislative finish line. But we appreciate that there are some divergent views on reforms here, and that is why we want to have a discussion about the principles and design for those reforms in the breakout session for this conference. And like all other setbacks we've had in the past, we will press on with this one. We won't give up until we achieve the outcome we're seeking. There are no excuses for why this can't happen in the life of the next Parliament of New South Wales. Also, as you heard from both Minister Scullion, but also more directly our Chairman, a centrepiece of the strategy is economic development. And the statistics support the compelling personal stories about why this has the potential to transform our communities for the better. The Chairman mentioned we're partnering with the Australian Government, and Scullion mentioned he's a proud supporter of NSWALC in its endeavours to establish the first business and employment hub. The hub is part of the Australian Government's Indigenous business sector strategy, and NSWALC has been successful in its proposal to set up the first of these across the country. And we know that through creating Aboriginal businesses, whether it's a LALC or it's an Aboriginal person as a business owner, that it creates jobs. Our people employ our people at a greater rate than non-Aboriginal people. 60 times, in fact, more likely to employ Aboriginal people are Aboriginal businesses. But this hub that we've been talking about, it will be a one-stop shop for Aboriginal entrepreneurs and job seekers, including LALCs, to discuss their business and employment needs and to be guided to the most appropriate support and service. And it goes for employers as well who wish to employ Aboriginal people or engage Aboriginal businesses in their supply chains. It'll be there to support them. There's no excuse for them not doing this. That's where we're headed. We're basing the initial steps in setting up this hub in Western Sydney because it is where most of the current opportunity is. But we know that we have to take the knowledge we gain there to deliver the same kind of support to areas in great need as well, including in the far west of the state and elsewhere. But it's in Western Sydney where the most employment opportunities will be available in the next few years through major investment in infrastructure construction. Almost $106 billion of infrastructure investment has been committed in the next 10 years. And most of this is in Greater Western Sydney, including the new airport, new rail. And based on initial projections, we know just in the next short while, there'll be at least 2,103 positions available for Aboriginal workers in infrastructure construction alone. We need to equip as many of our people as possible to take advantage of these jobs, and we can't leave it to job active providers. They're just not going to step up to the mark and meet it. Because these opportunities are transforming the lives of people. There is that opportunity to transform people's lives. But this is not the only way that we're looking to support our people across the network. The Council provides support to our people and communities through a number of NSWALC grant programs, and you've heard about some of those from the earlier presentations. From the Community Fund designed to assist less advantaged LALCs with land management and acquisition to small regional and statewide grant schemes. The Freddie Frick Scholarship that assists community members and organisations, and the fact that we put money into statewide grants to support cultural and sporting events. And to one of our flagship programs, which is both a flagship, something we're very proud that we're able to do, but also there's a level of sadness to it, the Funeral Fund. Assisting people during that period of sorry business. But these programs, collectively the budget for these programs, in this financial year alone, we will be spending over $38 million in those programs alone. But we know that this support and our focus on economic prosperity will not alone restore our people to our rightful place in this society. For that we need political power, and with only 3% of the population, the odds aren't stacked in our favour. And for that reason, our strategic plan also pays a lot of attention to pursuing our aspirations politically. In pursuing our aims, we must be the agents of our own destiny and must be genuine partners in the process to deliver much needed structural reforms. And Council are seeking to do this by supporting the principles, goals and inherent strategy of the Uluru Statement from the Heart, both at the national but also here in New South Wales level. And this is done so on the basis that we're very clear that we have never ceded our sovereignty and it's never been extinguished. We have been here for the last 60,000 years plus, really from the dreaming. And we've endured and we've survived, we have grown. But structural change is needed for us to really move beyond survival, to give us power over our destiny so that our children will flourish and that we will walk and thrive in the two worlds that we now live in. And we believe that the Uluru Statement from the Heart is an important vehicle for that change. We started that with our march on Parliament on International Day of Indigenous Peoples this year. And we've taken some other small steps toward resetting the relationship with the New South Wales Government and the Parliament. And you heard from Minister Mitchell. We've had some real stand-up ding-dongs with the Minister. And we have established a much more respectful working relationship as a result of those times that we disagree strongly with what the government are doing, including their introduction currently of some legislation that would affect children in care, in out-of-home care, where we're overrepresented. And we look forward to sharing those views in the sessions that we've got with you over the next couple of days. It's a time to really get involved in the detail and the discussion, because we won't be able to do that in all of these big sessions, and that's what the program is designed around. We've got a very challenging and ambitious agenda, this 5-year plan. It is going to challenge us, it's going to stretch us, but there is no alternative to keep on moving forward. This statewide conference gives us another opportunity and a chance to come together and to explore those things in depth, to listen and learn from each other's experience. And over the next 3 days, we will reflect on what is working well and what needs to improve. That's one thing we can trust of our mob. You'll know when it's working and when it's not, and what needs to be done about it. We'll have the chance to discuss how best to fulfil our people's aspirations through, for example, seeking treaties, boosting economic development opportunities, ensuring better protection of culture and heritage, providing decent housing, pursuing water rights, and working collectively with other community-controlled Aboriginal peak bodies. It's an action-packed program, but it promises to challenge and inform and inspire you. And we're looking forward to the next 3 days. We do appreciate that delegates have travelled a long way, and you're starting to wither towards the end of the day, so we're going to try and keep things on time, and look forward to, again, the engagement with you, both through the questions, but also in the breakout sessions. Thank you.